Yeah, sure. Welcome to the library studio here of the Yahowah blog. We're delighted to be able to give a recap of the last word picture. By way of background, the hero of our story was a bad boy. His name is Dod. He was the king of Israel. He happens to be the Son of God and the Messiah. And after living from 8 to 56 years old, so 48 years of exemplary life, where his lyrics were sublime, his life was extraordinary, where he was courageous and intelligent and articulate. He just was kind of the ultimate example of how we should live our lives. Extraordinary, extraordinary man. He lost his way. And he started drinking too much, lounging around during the day, sending his troops off to war rather than leading them. And then when at the end of a day of doing nothing, he got up from his bed in the early evening and went up to the roof to be a voyeur and saw a pretty, decided that he needed to have her, took her, had sex with her, and she was either previously pregnant or became pregnant, and that started a whole cavalcade of horrible events that led to Dod plotting the death of a very good man whose name means the light of Yah. And his letters conniving the means that he would use to obfuscate himself from guilt and kill not one but many men. It's as tragic as anything I've ever read. And I'm grateful that I came to know and love Dod based upon his lyrics and his life, 48 glorious years that he lived prior to this, before dealing with it. And I'm grateful that we reviewed this solution, God's intervention, sending the mother, who is elsewhere called the Amma, the most productive mother, but who in this Mizmor is called the greatest of all women, and the Asherah, the woman who offers a tremendous blessing and benefit. And she and her husband were able to resolve this such that Dod resolved his relationship with God and could go on to fulfill his second of three lives, where he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim. So it is quite a story and was a lot at stake. Now, as we went through the final word picture, this ultimate Mashal or proverb, one of the things that we did is we considered other passages that served as a way of introducing this. And I'm going to go through them in the order that they were actually brought to us through the Torah and prophets before we get to the Mashal itself. And the first one begins as follows. It says, "So Yahweh Almighty caused the fall of man." I'm going to share this with you because it's important for you to know that David became this man. He became lethargic. He lost his way. And so the man that had resolved this by being so aggressively assertive and contributory to God's plan became this very man. So I'm going to share this with you. And it reads, "So Yahweh Almighty, he caused the fall of man for being somewhat lethargic due to a lack of work and diligence. He slept inert and inactive, unmotivated and sedentary. And so he grasped hold of one of his ribs from his side, that part of him that was limp and lame, and he sutured up and isolated the place beneath it, replacing it over time with a bashar, herald. Yahowah, as God, he constructed, building a family on behalf of the Son, offering a woman through the rib, removing what was limp and lame, which he had taken from the man, and he brought her with unfolding implications over time to the man. Arishith 2:22. Then the man said, this is the way to conduct one's life, the pattern of behavior to be followed, and the motivation to push forward. It is the essential nature and substance of an upright life. Out of my essence and humanity, a living person is able to communicate intelligently. An individual with whom to talk in the flesh, for my desire to share positive thoughts as a herald while human. For this reason, she shall be welcomed and called, designated and known as the woman. Because indeed, for man, she was selected and obtained. Therefore, a man, this individual male, he shall leave, rejecting and forsaking, for having been absent from and abandoned by his father and his mother. And then he will engage, becoming close by becoming joined together with this woman, and they shall exist and become a unified declaration regarding heralding the pronouncements of life. The two, this man and his woman, they were completely exposed without barriers between them, and they were no longer wrong, disapproved, or mistaken. Barishith, Genesis 2:24 and 25. The reason that I shared that excerpt previously and again is that Adam and Chawah didn't have a mother and father. This wasn't being told for them. But Dode, he had one. And both mother and father abandoned him. They played no productive role in his life. And so Dode had to leave his mother and father for him to find his way. And they had, therefore, I look at these statements as all prophetic of this event in Dode's life that became the very fulcrum upon which life and death would hinge for this planet. Then we read how Leah, the namesake of my wife, would announce that she is the Ashar. This reads, and Leah literally said with unfolding implications, then Ashar, blessed and beneficial am I. This is because a time will come when daughters and women will be guided to an upright life by me, and women will be encouraged and blessed, benefiting and happy because of me. So she proclaimed that which pertained to his name as Asher. The woman in the word picture is named Ashar. And her name, of course, is Leah. She is a benefit and blessing to all women. Then we move to Verbatim, Deuteronomy 18:17. It reads, for the benefit of the relationship, they will be better off and more successful based upon what they have said. This was following a declaration by the children of Israel that they never wanted to see Yahowah again, and they didn't want to hear directly from him. And so God says, okay, I understand, that's better for you. And I share this because the intervention that saved Dode from himself and reunited father and son so that Dode could be trusted to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim in his second of three lives was a woman. Yes, a woman saved the man who saved the world. And it is God's commitment to work through people. And he has throughout time, and he will continue to do so. So we should be cognizant of this expression from Yahowah. I also wanted to share how Ruth made a very important declaration to her future husband, Boaz, and how he represents the one of the two pillars. There are two men whose lives are intertwined, standing upright side by side, 12 cubits apart. Cubit is the same word as Amah. And it is Ruth that will announce that she is the Amah, the most productive of mothers. Dod will announce that it was Yahweh's Amah that saved him from himself. And so these two people, Boaz, the husband of Ruth, and Dod, represented by these two columns, were forever joined. The text reads, and he established, erecting by standing upright, that which pertains to the amudim, these support pillars, the unifying juxtaposition of that which is set side by side, standing and grounded, remaining and enduring together. For the alam, the portico, to make this permanent bond on the porch of the hekel, the temple and royal residence. When he established and stood them upright, that which pertains to the amud, this unifying juxtaposition of the support pillar, on the right-hand side or south, he was called and proclaimed, read aloud and summoned for the mikra by that which is associated with his name, his reputation and renown. Yeken, one with the ability to overcome, to ultimately succeed and endure. And yes, as a result of this intervention, Dod would do that very thing. Then he established by standing upright that which pertains to the amud, the support pillar by his side, to endure, standing together. On the left-hand side or north, properly clothed and adorned in a covering garment. So he was called and proclaimed, read aloud and summoned for the mikra by that which is associated with his name, his reputation and renown. Boaz, the powerful one with prevailing strength, the one with the strength to get the job done. Melechem, 1 Kings 7:21. This is then how Ruth answered Leah when God sent her to this remarkable woman. He, who would be Boaz, her future husband, asked, with ongoing implications, who are you? Same question that Leah would ask of me, same question that she asked of her son, Dod. Who are you? She answered, I am Ruth, longing to strive to shepherd the flock, your Amma, protective mother. So spread out and stretch out the hem of your garment as wings over your Amma, maternal co-worker, who is branded and marked to deliver the Gaal, the kinsman redeemer, saving you. And she did, as Leah, as the Amma, this maternal co-worker of Yahowah, on behalf of her adopted son. And at her side was her husband, Boaz, the one with the strength to prevail. This then is in Dod's voice. It is at a time after our intervention when he wants to thank Yahowah for what he did for him during this final word picture. Speaking to God, his son, now reclaiming his status, says, you wanted to turn back to me, having chosen to appear before me face to face. Your desire is to be merciful and kind to me because you have decided to favor me, to be generous to me. You want to give me what I've emphatically requested your power, your strength, and fortification on behalf of your Ebed co-worker. You and I want to liberate the son, saving through the son by delivering your Amma, Yahweh's Amma, motherly co-worker. That is how the son who saved us was saved. We have God's word on it. You have decided to act engaging with me such that you working with me serves to provide for me a genuinely good, resolutely moral, an overtly positive sign, a miraculous symbol of femininity whose attitude and aptitude are especially productive and beneficial. Then those who have shunned and abhorred me, those who dislike and slight me, may choose to see and understand and be ashamed and even humiliated for that decision because you, Yahweh, supported me, helping and assisting me. And you consoled me, relenting regarding me, reconsidering your disposition toward me. These last two statements were from the 86th Mizmor, the 16th and 17th statements. Moving now to the 116th. Oh, Yahweh, indeed it's true. I am your co-worker. I am your servant, the son of your Amma, productive mother and co-worker. You have responded to open and release that which pertains to my bonds, freeing me from my punishment through disciplined instruction. Pretty amazing how explicit God is in revealing what the world has missed heretofore. Now, just affirming something that I had long perceived as true. The choder that Dode introduces in the 14th Mashal isn't actually coming from the stem of Yeshe. He's here to replace Yeshe. A choder stem will be extended out of the stump which has been cut down so that it is capable of supporting new growth of Yeshe to stand out and be noticed, drawing attention to the substance of existence as a netzer, an observant branch, by means of its roots and that which keeps it anchored, steadfast, and nourished, such that he will continually bear an abundance of fruit, being productive as a bull, while encouraging productivity in others. So with these insights, that was Isaiah 11:1, we're going to go through this recap of the final word picture. It reads, the Verbatim, the words of Lemuel Melech, the sovereign counselor and king, inseparable from God. This is a profoundly poignant prophetic pronouncement, a heavy burden to be borne, while paying tribute to someone tremendously uplifting with strong, heartfelt yearnings, revealed in a prophecy pertaining to the past as well as to the future. That is a benefit of the relationship and to reveal the way. Asher. This M, his mother, taught this to him for the express purpose of correcting him. Mashal, Proverbs 31:1. Who and when is the question? My radiant and bright chosen son. Ponder how and why, my favorite child and thoughtful boy, conceived within my place of origin. Consider what and where my chosen son, whose brilliance is reflected in the moonlight, and for whom I selected for this relationship, via my vow and binding promise. Do not ever offer or give your authorization, your qualifications, your competency to women, or your journey through life to someone who conceals the truth and destroys those with the authorization to lead. It is not for those authorized to govern, Lamuel, one inseparable from God. No, it's not for kings, for counselors and leaders to be drunk with wine, or for those who govern in a significant or judicious capacity to crave intoxicating libations. Otherwise, perhaps he would continually get drunk and forget, even overlook and ignore that which has been written as inscribed prescriptions and change, creating a different variation each year of the means to determine and distinguish between right and wrong, exercising good judgment regarding all of the children of the afflicted and suffering, the harassed, and even the persecuted. So you can offer, should you want, intoxicating beverages to the one who is already lost and dying, having squandered their life away, and wine to the embittered and disagreeable soul. He can habitually drink to the point of constant intoxication and forget his impoverished state of incapacitation as a result of his meekness and ignorance. And then his unpleasant and distressful situation and resulting misadventures will no longer be known or remembered. Open your mouth, speak boldly for those without a voice, concerning the defense and the cause of every child who is destitute and abandoned. Open your mouth, communicating profusely when choosing to lead and litigate, making sound decisions correctly, honestly, and justly, thereby electing to exercise good judgment, governing and defending the responsive as well as the willing. How is he to find, to obtain, and experience a strong and capable woman of noble character who is as enriching as she is virtuous, far more valuable than rubies, corals, or even jewels? Can he confide in her? Will he confidently trust her, relying on her during missteps and still feel safe? Whoa, what an insightful statement. Dode had chosen women because they were either politically positioned to enhance his status, or they were pretty, and he simply coveted them for the way they looked. And here, this adoptive mother, the one who would save him from himself, said, there's something vastly more valuable than that, son. Finding a woman that you can confide in, someone you can genuinely trust, someone you can rely upon, even during missteps, and still feel safe. One of the beautiful insights here is not only the depth of character that would allow that, and the budding of trust that causes this to happen, and the great joy of being able to rely on someone in this regard, is that Yahowah, rather than trying to avoid us having a misstep, wants us to stumble and fall. He doesn't want us to be perfect. He wants us to make mistakes. He wants us to fail. Why? Because it is only through failure that we can demonstrate that we have what's in that which needs to be in us to have the character to succeed, to show that we can succeed. It is only through obstacles that we can show that we know how to overcome them. It is by falling that we prove that we can get back up. It is by making a mistake that we show we're capable of learning. So this is really quite brilliant. It's one of the more recent deductions we have made in restudying the events of the garden, that there wasn't an initial sin, that Eve, who was actually Chahwa, didn't cause the problem, that Yahowah foreclosed on the garden experience because he wanted man to fall so that we could demonstrate the capacity to get back up, so that we can prove that we could be trusted. That's the point she's making here. But she's also saying, wouldn't it be great if when you stumble and fall, when you make a mistake, that you could have a strong woman there that you could confide in, just as she was providing this counsel for her son? So in the judgment and desire, the mind and heart, even the thoughts and emotions of her husband, her Baal, Lord and Master, he never lacks for anything. He never ceases to prosper. He never stops benefiting, and he is never deprived, such that he is not without what he needs to prevail, particularly regarding the things deemed most valuable. That's Mashal 31:11. This is brilliant counsel. Not only is it the great gift that a loving couple can bring to one another, to be able to rely on each other and to help each other when we stumble and fall, because it is how we help one another develop the ability to get back up. It's how we instill a passion to succeed. It's how a burden is halved, a joy is doubled. And so she goes on to say that in the fullness of one's leb, which would be the mind and heart, the judgment and desire, the thoughts and emotions of her husband, a woman who fulfills this role for her husband assures that he never lacks for anything. He never ceases to prosper. If you are buttressed by a brilliant and reliable, trustworthy woman who has your best interests at heart, you will prosper. You will never stop benefiting. You'll never be deprived. You'll not ever go without what you need to prevail. And that is particularly true when dealing with the most valuable things in life. This remarkable M said that a reliable wife whose mindset is to provide these marvelous gifts, she acts in a way that yields to and serves him so as to treat him properly, beautifully, and productively. And he is never, she is, I should say, never harmful, troubling, disagreeable, or hindersome all the days of her life. For those that think that a woman being submissive to her husband in this way is somehow out of step with modern sensibilities, may I remind you of what Yahowah said just a moment ago? And excuse me 1 second. My dog was biting herself again. That Yahowah in Mizmor that Dode had written, it was actually Dode who said, I want to thank you, Yahowah, for supporting me, for giving me everything that I needed. Yahowah puts himself in this same position relative to us. His goal is to offer us what we need to succeed. Now, I don't think you would ever say that Yahowah is subservient to man, would you? And yet, that's the mindset that God has towards our relationship when we become part of his family. It's what parents do for their children. It's what spouses do for one another. And that is what is being conveyed here. That sometimes the best way to accomplish something worthwhile is to offer to support somebody who is engaged in doing something worthwhile. And that is what this M is recommending for her son. Don't choose somebody who is conniving, that's trying to milk you for all you have to give. Instead, rather than someone who's trying to take from you, why don't you turn to someone who's trying to contribute to you? Then you never have to worry about that person being disagreeable or hindersome, ever. You never have to worry about what they're doing behind your back, because they have your back. She cares and is concerned regarding seeking to learn about wool and flax. She continually engages and performs with her pleasing and delightful hands. Well, the first reference, as I shared earlier, wool is what Dode would have worn when he was crucified on Passover as the lamb. And flax is what he will wear as linen when he returns and fulfills the role of the high priest on Yom Kippurim, anointing the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. She is saying, therefore, it's important that you learn who you are. You, sir, are the Passover lamb. You are the king who will anoint the mercy seat when he returns on Yom Kippurim. And then she says, it's not just about outward appearances. It's also about how a woman makes you feel. And she can not only adorn you for success, so that you dress for success, she can touch you in ways that cause you to know that you are genuinely loved. She went on to say, she exists like a fleet of ships, a merchant who travels about throughout distant places. She harvests, then arrives bringing her loaves of bread, but also her battles. My wife and I came here on, it was at the time, was the largest boat and privately owned boat here in the Virgin Islands. And we have brought so much to the world as merchants. My wife is a fashion designer, myself as a merchant trader. And we have traveled in different places. The more we have traveled between the two of us, over 200 countries, the more we have learned, the greater perspective we have on Israel, on ourselves, on you, on our King, the better advice we can give. And we are absolutely involved in the harvest, Shabuah and Teruah, recognizing that the 2 loaves of bread are symbolic of Shabuah, and that to serve in this capacity, one must fight many battles, as Dode would do. She consistently rises and gets up while it is yet night. And she provides offering that which is freshly picked and nourishing for her family. And as a share properly throughout and appointed for her girls, her female attendants and young ladies, 3115. She's giving the whole rundown here. Dode, like myself, this mother's husband, was an early riser. He loved to get up before the sun, as do I. Leah, my wife, this mother, is a night owl. While we're sleeping, they're working. And what it's basically saying is, we're going to be synergistic. Much of the day we will be together, but I will do my best work when it's just me and I have this time to focus on what needs to be done for us. And then you get up early in the morning and we'll meet thereafter and we'll talk about what I contributed for you during the night. That not interested in so much in being served as they are being productive. A productive mother wants to freshly pick nourishing food for her family. She's not hedonistic. She's not self-indulgent. She's not trying to live off the fat of the land. She wants to make a contribution. She wants to make certain that her children are properly nourished. And in this case, my beloved wife, and this becomes obvious that this woman, this mother of Dode, is my wife. She is also desirous of screening and helping and apportioning and properly preparing all of the other female attendants and young ladies that will be involved in Dode's life. She says, I'll take care of that for you. You've done a really poor job of picking companions. Says, so I'll screen them for you. I'll curate them for you. I'll prepare them for you such that you will lack for nothing. Everything you could ever want. She has considerations and plans for the land, and she acquires it out of the fruit of her hands. She plants, with the help of her man, firmly entrenches a vineyard and orchard. The purpose of this mother and father, of this wife and her husband, of the Amma and her Baal, is to be productive. It's the thing that would seem so simple, but in the 6,000 years, including the time in the garden and all the way back up to it, turns out there were only two people that saw it through, that finished the mission, that managed to plant that garden, entrenched themselves within it, and harvest the fruit, all the way from planting it to harvesting it. Two. The garden experience was cut short because Adam didn't measure up. Moshe, he gave up within a year of the time he had been appointed, asking God to kill him. They made a deal and he got them to the promised land, but not in. Dode had 48 magnificent years, but then major crash and burn. Now, he would come back in his second or third lives and do something extraordinary, fulfilling Passover and matzah. But heretofore, no one had managed to see the job to the finish line, to plant the vineyard and to harvest its fruit. Now, I have shared this before, and it bears reminding. For many of you, and I understand the difficulty of this, you don't understand how a man and woman who are alive today, who share roles on the Yahowah vlog, talk to you frequently. The man who wrote this translation and his wife that asked him to do so could have spoken to another 3,000 years ago. You don't know how that's possible. And you don't have any idea how Yahowah could take a person like Hanok, known as Enoch, and have him perform a particular role where he walked with God, and then to remove him so that he could insert him again. The name says it all. It means that Chanok means he was trained, he was prepared, he was devoted, and he was deployed. And that was just the first of many times. God is not sending someone back in time. That would rip the fabric of the universe apart, alter cause and effect. No, he's inserting certain souls along the timeline, in time, to accomplish what he needs done. It is essential at times for God to intervene. For example, when Moshe was born in Mitzrayim, it was during a time where boys were murdered. And yet God needed Moshe not only to survive, he needed Moshe to grow up in an environment where he was exposed to and then could reject politics and religion, the caste economic system. And that's exactly what happened, because Anama was dispatched and intervened to cause that to happen. That's the way God inserts these two souls and brings them back out. When Dod was so hideously wrong in everything associated with Bathsheba, Yahowah reinserted this Amma as his adoptive mother to speak openly and honestly with him to get his attention, which she did. And I think she awakened him and softened him up to the point that it would be the 1-2 punch, because there's a lot of mention here and elsewhere of her husband, who is no nonsense. And Dod needed to be reacquainted with who he is, why it was not appropriate for him to have done the things he did. And so God got him back firmly established in his relationship with him, so that he could fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bekurim and save the world. So this is all part of that process. It says here, she drapes and wraps apparel, dressing and girding her slender waist, loins, and body, confidently and boldly, in an empowering and capable fashion. She is determined and persistent, always courageous in establishing and enabling the strength and the status and the very success of her Yahowah. The strong arm, cultivating a productive harvest, that's her husband. And also the sacrificial lamb, that would be her son. Thank Yahowah that this was revealed long after we came to know the identity of the Yahowah, so that we could appreciate what was being said here. And there were two of them. Typically, there's only one. But this mother, would be husband to the final Yahowah, the strong arm cultivating a productive harvest, Shabu and Teruah, and the adoptive mother of the ultimate Yahowah, the sacrificial lamb of Passover. Now, what this woman is saying to her adoptive son is that a beautiful woman can also be strong. A strong woman can also be beautiful. Oz is the term that is used here. It's the same word as we find in Boaz, which means with strength. And so she was beautifully attired and is beautifully attired. She is an attractive woman, keeps her body in beautiful shape. She's pleasing inside and out. You don't have to give up one for the other, is what she's saying. But while adorning a beautiful woman and girding her for the festival feast, this is Shagar, which speaks of the feast. This would be Chag, Matzah, and Chag Sukah. That it's one thing, and that's something she's committed to doing, to dressing and girding all of her family for the feast. And that she will be as beautiful outwardly as she is powerful and capable inwardly. And this combination is what makes it possible for her to strengthen and enable these marvelous Yahowah. It's an expression of outward physical strength to endure the sacrifices of Pesach and Teruah, but also that inward strength to be willing to make this sacrifice for others. And she is saying that the right woman will support her Yahowah, even in the most difficult of all circumstances. And nothing could be more difficult than what those two men will endure, one on Passover, the other on the day of the Herald. She goes on, that was a sobering moment, but she said her exquisite taste, her discretion and experience, her good judgment, affirm that indeed what she produces is resolutely good. It's pleasing, it's beautiful, has a lovely appearance, and performs well. It's of excellent quality and is enjoyable and desirable while also feeling comfortable and looking attractive. Her lamp, her illumination and flame is never quenched or extinguished during the dark hours of the night. You need, particularly kings, need a woman at their side who has exquisite taste, but who also knows something about discretion, who can exercise good judgment. Someone who is pleasing, beautiful, who performs well, is an excellent contributor. And she's just saying that that kind of light and enlightenment, that flame that, well, let's say near, that is given off by such a beautiful woman can never be quenched, can never be extinguished. Why? Because Yahweh is going to transform his covenant family from physical beings into light. And when we are transformed into light, we are eternal. Nothing can quench the resulting brilliance. She reaches out her hands expertly to the spindle and skillfully to the staff to please, and the palms of her hands seize and grasp hold of the round staff and stick. Yes, there's double entendres through this, but you know, she's talking to a man who was overly fixated on sensual pleasure. And as a result of that, we, another reminder, just a distraction, so that my beloved Labrador doesn't tear her pearls apart. She just finds that when we do these shows, she thinks that we're going to ignore her and she can just eat herself into oblivion. And of course, she would harm herself tremendously. So these are double entendres. These are sensual statements that she has shared in a way that will not be offensive to children. They'll never understand them, and yet understood by adults. And yet they're couched in the same role that she is essential in playing. She is the seamstress for forevermore. She is the one who is crafting the garments that we will all wear at the homecoming, at the royal wedding, as we celebrate Teruah, as we enter the garden again on Sukah. It says she spreads out her hands to the responsive who are receptive, and she reaches out and extends her hands to the willing and enthusiastic. God does not tell us to preach the gospel. First of all, he doesn't have a gospel, and second of all, he doesn't want us to preach. But his interests are not for us to try to convince those who are religious or political. He doesn't even want to know them. There's no interest in them because you cannot reason with them. So this is saying, listen, we're not going to be for everyone. I can't. She says, I can't, you can't, your future wife cannot. Be all things to all people. That's not the purpose. We are here to support those who are receptive. We're here to serve those who are willing. We want to work with those who are equally enthusiastic. We care about the Ibanon, and that is all things pertaining to being willing. These are remarkable people who played a tremendous role in bringing to us what we now know as the Sermon on the Mount and the Olivet Discourse. She knows her Torah, or she never would have been able to share these things with her beloved son. She says she is no longer intimidated or afraid of this distinct honor and sign of respect for the sake of her family and home, as snowflakes with water becoming uniquely beautiful and distinct, even from being perceived as icy and cold through an occasional indiscretion, a rash response, or unintentional mistake. This is because her entire household and family are clothed in crimson when fully grown and mature. Now, this is a very mature conversation, and you're going to have a 0% possibility of understanding any of that until you're well on your way to developing a productive, beneficial, engaged, enlightened, observant, responsive relationship with Yahowah. So here, the first thing that we learn from her statement is that when you're very mature in your relationship with God, you recognize that there is nothing more challenging, nothing more difficult, really, than being put in the limelight. When we're put in the limelight, then we're the target of all manner of attack. It is the reason why Moshe lasted a week before he crumbled. It's the reason why after 48 years, Dode folded. When you're put in that spotlight, representing Yahowah, in a world that hates God, that much prefers the false gods that they make in their image, prefers their political control to God's desire to liberate. You have much of the world that turns against you. You are subject to everyone's attack. And there is also, that goes with that, this propensity for someone who isn't resolutely focused on the goal of Yahowah to develop even an ego as a result of it. But if you know the role, none of that happens. You develop a very cool confidence. You develop character and tough skin. And in this case, this is something that the woman that I first met online 18 years ago, when she wrote me the first letter, "Who are you and why are you doing this?" And then 8 years ago, when she was filled with all manner of anxieties for having been treated poorly by so many, both men and women, she would have been overwhelmed by this distinction, for God calling her the most important of all women, for God saying that you are a blessing and a benefit to all women, for saying that you are the most productive of mothers. That would have been intimidating. That would have been so off-putting that she would have run away screaming.
Yep.
There she is in the background saying, yep, she would have. But just barely, after spending 18 years together corresponding and 8 years together personally, and all of the Torah study along the way, and all the learning and reinforcing, and for her witnessing how I have tried to deal with being in the spotlight. She now has a quiet confidence. She is not intimidated by it. She's curious by it. She wants to make certain she understands it, not afraid of it anymore. And she knows how essential this is for the sake of her family and home. She also knows, as a designer, that her job is to make snowflakes. You see, the difference between water and snowflake is that a snowflake is far more beautiful and unique, as we must be set apart and so different than the rest of the world, like a snowflake. And so it is a marvelous metaphor that she has provided, but yet she also knows that we are not like snowflakes that are easily melted, because ultimately her entire family is going to be bathed in red and crimson, because we live as a result of the blood of the Passover lamb. We will renew the final remnant of Yisrael in time for David's wedding and his return, the great homecoming, because of the blood of the sacrificial bull. This is who we become when we are fully grown and mature. Recognize that there will be those who have read all of these books, who have been with me over much of these last 24 years, that are going to understand and appreciate all of that. And others, that'll go right over your heads. But it's there nonetheless, and it's important that we recognize what she said, that I share the meaning behind the words. You know why they would have resonated with her intended audience, and her audience was Dowd. And then through him, all of those growing in the covenant, so that we can appreciate this. I mean, you need to know that what she was there intervening to resolve was horrific. And it needed this level of intelligence. Going on to tell us that her role is to dress us for success, that she is indeed the woman making the garment of luminosity that I spoke of some 18 years ago that brought us together. It says she makes coverings and fabrics for her of fine linen, in addition to woven yarn and cloth for her garments. This is important because she is using linen, which is what the high priest, as Dowd, as he returns as king, will be wearing when he anoints the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, the most important wardrobe she ever made. And she is responsible for dressing his bride on that day. And she will be dressed in fine linen as well. Might be a few starlight sparkles in the dress as well. And she also will weave clothing of wool, because it's reminiscent of what Dowd did to resolve his guilt and ours, so that he could open up this doorway to life. It says her husband, Baal, who is actually her Lord and Master. It is a very strong relationship. And he is known and respected as Yahowah. Yahowah is the name that I used when I first started writing. It's the name that appears before Yahowah's in every book that I have written, all 35 of them. The website is Yahowah.com. The books are Yahowah. My name for the first 10 of the 25 years that we were in this relationship was Yahowah, one who knows. I have been Yahowah more than I have been Craig over these past 24 years. And so her husband is known and respected as Yahowah, especially within the inner sanctum of the thoughtful and rational assembly. We must think our way to God, and that's what I have offered, the ability to do so. Within, he himself dwells, and he remains established with the authorized elders and the prominent leaders in the land and the material realm. It is not just this this Amma, this Ashar, the mother of Dod, the productive mother of the covenant family, the seamstress making the garment of luminosity for the celebration of Chag Sukah as it arrives here in just a little over 7 years. It's also her husband. They do this together. They are modeling for Dod what he is to model for the rest of us. They're modeling for all who would be part of the covenant precisely what God is looking for. And I've said this so many times, and I'm going to repeat myself. I understand that there are those who think that if you're serving as an example, then your life needs to be near perfect. And that is not true. God does not want us to be perfect. If we were perfect, it would be horrendously counterproductive. The environment in Eden was perfect, and it forestalled Adam's growth. Yeah, you cannot succeed in a perfect environment. Not possible. Because to succeed, to grow, to be of value, to show that you can be trusted, to become worthy, to make a contribution, there must be things to overcome. There must be mistakes so that you can learn and grow. You must trip and fall so you can demonstrate the will and ability to get back up. These are things that are essential. It is only when we fail that we can prove that we have the moxie to be successful. It is our imperfections that make us interesting, that give us character. And so that is what we're here to model. We're here to show that Yahowah was explicit relative to the garden. He wanted 4 things from Adam, and Adam delivered none of the 4. And God caused the fall of man so that we could eventually figure out how to resolve what Dod, and well, in this case, Dod, but what Adam failed to achieve. That's what Dod at this moment is failing to achieve. That we can be observant. We can pay attention to what's happening around us. Listening to God. Reading his testimony. And applying it to everything that's happening around us so we're not oblivious. I spend as much time studying the world around us as I do studying the Word of God, because the Word of our God has to apply and be interjected into this real world of ours. You need to know the contrast between what he's offering and what man's offering. You need to be observant, first and foremost. And when God says, Shamar, I want you to be observant, and when he spoke of that specifically to Adam, the first man, with the Nesama, created in the image of God, Shamar is equal parts closely examining and carefully considering. It's to see and think. So God wants us to perceive what's happening around us and to consider it. And then comes the important part. He wants us to respond. For there to be a relationship, we must engage. A one-sided relationship is an oxymoron. It's counterproductive. The person who is doing nothing is an entitled brat, a dependent, a negative, a parasite. God's not interested in that. He wants us to be making a contribution. He wants us to be engaged in the family business. He wants us to participate, to work with him, to make a better world, to make a better relationship. He wants us to be like the husband and wife that this M is discussing before the very Son of God. And then after those 3 things, to be observant, to be thoughtful, to be responsive. God needs us to be responsible. That when we make a mistake, that we're willing to correct it. We're willing to learn from it. When we stumble and fall, that we demonstrate the will to get up and get going again. Those are the four things. These are the things that the M's Baal, as Yada, taught this woman, now his wife, and perhaps also impressed upon his adoptive son, Dode. Dode, the man who did not know his mother and was rejected by his father, was appointed a mother and father that modeled the very behaviors that God was looking for from his son. This goes on to say in the 24th statement of the 31st and final Mashal, linen garments which envelop, wrap, and cover. She is made, she values, and she is offering as a quid pro quo, surrendering and transferring possession of these highly treasured garments. The celebratory slashes in preparation for the Chag feast, the Chagor, she offers as a gift to the Canaanite, this merchant salesman of hers, her husband. Yes, God wants his family leaders, his exemplars. He wants them dressed in linen. They will be wearing layaware. They will be positioned to celebrate the Chag Matzah and Chag Sukah, the spring and fall feasts, dressed for success, dressed in the very garment of luminosity that I spoke of 20 years ago. They're her gift. And they are offered by way of the merchant salesman of her husband that he now can dole out to every covenant member, and he's not going to give them away free. Nope. He's not going to charge money for them, but he'll elicit a price because he knows that if we don't invest in something, if we don't contribute to it, we don't value it. So I can assure you this, that she is offering them through her Canaanite merchant salesman of a husband for these Chag feasts because he knows that they can't be given away, that they must be earned to be appreciated. And so you say, what is he going to charge for them? I just told you it's not money. He won't have any use for that. And he's never charged for his books. You can go to yahowah.com. Every single book in its entirety is free. Yahowah.com. Go there. Check it out. Every book is free. There's not even a donate button on the site. How's that? But I also know that those who do not contribute for what they are given don't appreciate it. And so I will elicit a contribution. And it will be very similar to the contribution that Yahowah has sought, because I have found that if you go to where his words lead, if you embody what he is offering and expects in return, you can't be wrong. So I know the fair price. You want one of these garments? Be observant, be thoughtful, be responsive, and be responsible. Oz, of course, by Beoz, strength and fortitude, dignity, and a most beautiful appearance, a noble status and character. They adorn her. She will be the most beautiful of all of the women. And so she is amused and entertained, smiling and laughing during the day to come, at long last and throughout the future. She is the exemplar. She's the most beautiful woman inside and out, the most noble of character, the most beautiful of appearance, the most dignified. It amuses her, entertains her. She's going to smile and laugh because she knows that there is a benefit for all when she models these things. She opens her mouth with wisdom, chakma, intelligently revealing the capacity to understand. You see, it's brains and beauty. She's as bright as she is beautiful. She has chakma. And a loyal love and affection, showing great favoritism and devotion, chesed, for the Torah, the guidance and teaching, the instructions and directions of Yahowah. They are what's on her tongue. Leah, given the option, wouldn't sleep. She would do Torah 24/7. She devours it. She loves it. She lives in its pages. And she recognizes something that we've all come to embrace. The prophets are Torah. The Mizmor are Torah. Every inspired word of our God, as he is communicated through men and women of his choice, contain his Torah teaching and guidance. So now as she seeks, how am I to fulfill this role to the utmost of our collective collaboration? She turns to the Torah for guidance and teaching. Just as I want to know how to do this job, I turn to my pal Yahowah. He's written the textbook on the subject. And now we hear that this is the most complete of all women. She's wise, she's beautiful, and she's loving. Wise, beautiful, and loving. And as a result, or perhaps as the cause, perhaps both, the Torah is always on her tongue, sweet as honey. She keeps watch, always on the lookout, in hopeful expectation for improved results in the ways, the walk, and the affairs of her family and home. She does not consume or feed upon the bread of conflict of those who lack discipline or who are immoral, the idle or the lazy, without the initiative to make a contribution. Boy, isn't this true. Leah's always on the lookout. She's hopeful that she will continue to encounter those who exceed expectations, who are willing to engage, who bring aptitude and attitude to the family, who are self-motivated and know that when we make a contribution on behalf of Yahowah, his son, and the Torah, the covenant family, that is appreciated by our God, and that these contributions never go unrewarded. And so she is completely devoted to the affairs of her family. That's the covenant family. And as a result, she doesn't feed upon the bread of conflict, and she doesn't spend any time with those who lack discipline, who are immoral. If you're lazy and idle, you're not going to find Leah responsive. You need to take the initiative, make a contribution. Her children will rise up, they will take a stand, and as a result of all of this, they're going to call her Ashar, going to call her a beneficial blessing for having revealed the way to capitalize on this relationship. They will call her Ashar, and they're going to call her husband Baal, the Lord and Master too. He reflects her bright and clear light and consistently praises her, extolling her virtues. Now, we've made very clear that Yahowah does not want to be called a Lord because he prefers being known as our Father. And it is a fatherly role that I'm being asked to play beside the Amma, mother, this Ashar, for the covenant family and for those who are being invited to return to Eden and to model the 4 responses that Yahowah is looking for. And in that regard, there is an honorarium, and this title is one that was used throughout time to say essentially, yes, sir, as you would back in my day when you were speaking to someone who was older and who had achieved something in their life that was sharing insights with you and being generous with you, you would show them the respect of saying, yes, sir. And that's sort of what this means. But it also means that God knows that we humans, even in a perfect environment, which the Garden of Eden is going to provide, when the whole earth is transformed to those conditions, we still need leadership. Dode's going to be our king. He's going to be the sovereign of forevermore. But even Dode needs leadership. And so do all of those who will be part of this covenant family. And so this is to say that this person is going to be such that just as Leah is perceived as the beneficial one who offers the blessings of the covenant, that her husband's going to be known as Baal, the Lord and Master. Many women have acted, engaged, and performed aptly and ably, demonstrating the power of their convictions. This is a powerful thing for Dode to say, because he had never experienced a woman who performed ably or aptly, never had a relationship with a woman who had the power of her convictions. He had never met a noble woman, capable and competent. If he had, he disregarded them, and he never looked more than skin deep. But this woman got his attention. This woman was far more than just physically beautiful. She was brilliant, and she had character, and she had conviction, and she was competent. And so he said of her, in an inspired text from Yahowah, "You yourself surpass and rise, ascending above and are exalted above them all." Mashal 31:29. Therefore, the disingenuous and the vain of compassion and favoritism that seek popular appeal, they are meaningless, they are futile, because it's all about a woman who is brilliant and beautiful, who reveres and respects Yahowah. It is she who is to be independently admired and celebrated, without compulsion, all for radiating her beautiful, brilliant, and clear light. And as the fruit of her hands, those of you who are harvested into the covenant family, you all have decided to be entrusted to her as a gift. And you should now choose to be productive for her. And so, her contributions and accomplishments will exclaim that she is praiseworthy by acknowledging her brilliant radiance and clear light. Also, within that inner sanctum of the thoughtful assembly of those who think rationally. The conclusion of the final word picture. Now, I am thankful that Yahowah waited to the very end to present his gift, enabling us to unwrap her with loving care. It is true love, the love of a son, the support of a husband, the appreciation of our God, and the contributions that we can make to his family. That is what we are commemorating with the final word picture. I thank you for listening.